Well, good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to the United Way, Living United with Small Business show. Every so often, typically monthly, we interview local small businesses, entrepreneurs who are making a difference in our community and are doing things which are unique and different that you might not know about. So what do they all have in common? They all have in common that they're entrepreneurial and that they're doing great things to move our community forward, but they also all have a heart in terms of giving back to the community. So today I'm very excited to have with me Tony Pica. Tony and I have known each other for a number of years now. Founder of Heartstop Media, a local video production company. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here today. It's good to see you. You know, we see each other all the time, but it's good to see you in a different place, in a different space. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Heartstop Media, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper after that.
Sure. Well, as you already said, we're a media production company focusing on video. I kind of like to think of us as marketing strategists that use video as our primary tool. And so we work with a lot of other small businesses. We're all B2B. We don't do weddings or anything like that. And we help small businesses create content either for social media on a weekly or monthly basis, or we will create some higher end evergreen assets that they can, house permanently on their website or other places online. So most of the content we make ends up on the internet. We theoretically can do television, but it's not as popular these days. Obviously with TV, you have to have the budget to create the content, but then also to run it as an advertisement. So for a lot of businesses, there might be a barrier there cost-wise. So most of our customers are going straight to the web. And I've been doing this full-time since 2021-ish, but the business has existed since 2018 when I really started working with other companies.
It's so interesting to hear you describe TV as sort of an old media channel. I am old. I'm just realizing every time I talk to somebody how old I actually am, because, for me, I'm willing to admit that ink on paper newspapers is old media. I'm not quite there yet with television, and you know that I do radio as well, but this is all old media, and it's really the whole world, and particularly in terms of advertising and the ability for sure of small and medium-sized businesses to connect to the world seems to be going more and more on the web and social media. Are there trends there that you can really kind of point to?
It's interesting because we look at, a lot of people will say legacy media is kind of going away. TV killed the radio stars, the kind of old saying, but we still have radio. And so it's an interesting dichotomy, I guess, because as you have more and more eyeballs on social media, companies are going to want to advertise there because that's where the eyeballs are. But there's still huge groups of people, perhaps generational, that are still using newspaper or TV as their primary source of media. And so as a business, it's important for you to know where your customers are spending their time. And in order to do that, you have to know who your customers are. But then it also creates a unique opportunity, because as less and less people maybe invest in advertising in the newspaper, that just makes your advertising that much more powerful when you do advertise there in regards to your competition, I suppose. So I have a client that is just now starting to invest in social media for their business. However, probably 30% of their customer base doesn't even use email. So they're getting prepared for the next generation, but there's still a huge opportunity for them to do mailers and to do all that stuff. So it'll never really go away. But when you talk about trends, I heard something a little depressing, and that was networks like Netflix and Hulu supposedly have been giving show writers feedback and telling them that the plots of their shows are too complex because people are splitting their time between their phone and the television running at the same time. So they want them to kind of make the plot a little simpler so people can follow along while they're only half paying attention. And I thought that was a little sad, you know.
I almost want to pretend you didn't say that and I didn't hear that, because if I think about my own behavior, of course I do that. I think we all do that. And, but it's true that when something is hard to follow on the screen, the result for me is I put my phone away,
Right.
because which is really kind of more what you want. So tell me, there's a lot of DIYers, do-it-yourselfers in the world of photography, video, you name it. We all have a phone in our pocket. The phone's got a incredibly powerful, high resolution camera. Can take a lot of images. Can create some pretty decent quality content. What differentiates you from a DIYer?
That's an excellent question, and it's not the equipment. And so let me preface this by saying we have professional equipment. And there's a time and a place for highly polished videos. A very scripted advertisement with complicated lighting setups. We'll hire actors and actresses, and we will shoot it like a big budget commercial that you would see on TV. When it comes to social media content, especially stuff that you're going to be posting weekly, first of all, it's just not practical to do high-end productions like that. But a lot of viewers, intuitively understand that it's over the top, it's too well done, it's too planned, and people want to feel more of an organic, personal connection.
So it doesn't have that or authentic
Correct.
feel to it.
Yeah. And so I still help people, even if they're doing lower budget they're shooting with a cell phone or no professional lighting, but you can still really put a lot of thought into planning. And that's where the strategy of our marketing background comes in, because one of the major problems businesses have is they know that posting on social media is important, but they don't know what to post. And so the first thing we do with all of our customers is really sit down to figure out, who is your customer? What problems do they have? What kinds of things are they interested in? And we come up with 6 months to a year's worth of ideas of what you could make social media posts about. And that way you never get to that point where you have 5 good ideas, you exhaust them, and then you don't know what to post, you just give up on it. To really see results out of social media for a business, 3 months minimum, but more realistically 6 to 12 months to see any traction. So that's really what differentiates us. We don't just make nice content. We really get into the weeds of the strategy and the ideas behind successful content.
Helping to really be a partner in the marketing plan.
Yeah, and we stay up to date on the social media trends. And they change rapidly. So we were using a fairly structured scripting template for our customers, and that's more or less out the window now. And we moved to a scriptless format that we have a way that we can kind of tease the right information out of whoever is on camera.
Yep.
But those kind of scripted, really fast-paced edits you were seeing on social media last year, that fell off a cliff, and people want more of that slower-paced storytelling now this year. And who knows what next year is going to look like.
The cycle, the merry-go-round just goes round and round.
It's fast.
How is artificial intelligence affecting your business and the work that you do?
That's a great question. There's a lot to keep up with. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of pros and cons. So as someone who creates content and helps others create content, there are certainly some tools that have sped up the workflow. When ChatGPT came out, for example, people were having that thing write their emails, write scripts for social media, write blog posts. And what was quickly happening was that everything was starting to sound the same. So even though a service like ChatGPT might be able to give you a factually correct script about a topic, it did sound very artificial.
It's interesting you say that. I am on I'm going to say this in a way that nobody can figure out what I'm talking about. But I am on a judging panel for a speech competition, here somewhere in southern New Hampshire, and recently participated in an event and noticed that as compared to previous years, there were several speeches that absolutely had the watermark of artificial intelligence embedded in them.
Yeah.
And I found that to be unfortunate. And then I was in a scholarship, also on a scholarship panel that I was recently looking at, college scholarship applications. And we, as a judging panel, noticed that of the dozen or so scholarship applications, probably at least a quarter of them were not written by any high schooler who ever existed in the history of high schoolers. Pretty interesting to see how this is evolving, and a little disconcerting, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a real issue. I think those tools can be used in the correct way. Maybe you're trying to brainstorm some ideas for whatever project you're working on, and you just need a prompt to get the juices flowing. I think it's excellent for that. You can almost use it as a research assistant to pull up information very quickly. But I would never have it just write something for me and then just run with it. And you see Google now is rolling out ways for them to detect if your website's blogs are written by AI. They don't like that. Social media platforms like TikTok, they are requiring you to tag if the content is AI generated before you upload whatever that video is. And so I do think that it's still important to have those concrete communication skills or whatever skill your trade requires. And you can use these tools as a guide, but if you don't have the fundamentals to know what good language sounds like, you can't recognize if ChatGPT wrote something worthwhile or not. So it's rapidly changing. It's a little scary, but there are still some serious limitations with it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the questions I'm preparing for this, wanted to ask you is, and it's unfair for me to ask you this without having told you I was going to ask you.
That's okay.
What would you consider to be the, 5 or 6 attributes of good quality video?
That's a tough question because it's just a little bit contextual. But I will say that generally speaking, the number one thing, whether it's an advertisement or a social media post, is that it has to emotionally transport the viewer in some way. You have to bring somebody from A to B. So I think clear storytelling, to use that as a kind of a broad term, is the number one attribute. I would say secondly is authenticity. So even if you are making an advertisement, look, I'm a business, I'm trying to sell you something that's very obvious, you can still be authentic about it. You can still communicate to your customers in an ethical and authentic way, because really good businesses solve problems, right? And that's what my business does. Posting to social media on a regular basis is a pain in the butt. I come in and I solve that problem for my customers by helping them create content. So number one is the storytelling. Number two is authenticity. And number three, if we want to add a concrete technical detail in there, is audio. If the audio is not clear, people will not sit through it. If the visuals are a little that's okay. People will tolerate it. But if your voice is cutting in and out, or it's scratchy, or it's very difficult to hear, people will just click off, swipe away, move on to the next thing almost immediately. So
super interesting to hear you refer to the sense of hearing as a reference point for high quality production of something which is generally thought of as a visual media.
Correct. Yeah. So you can kind of test this on yourself.
I don't need to test it. I know exactly what you're saying. And it's 100% true.
It's almost subconscious though.
Yeah, I even notice it if I'm watching TV and for some reason the server has rebooted, and there's out of sync between the video and the audio. Maybe there's a little delay. And if the lips don't exactly match the sound that's coming out,
nuts,
even if the sound is good quality, drives me crazy. I'll turn it off.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
I can't do it.
I'm the same way. So, yeah.
My wife never notices it. She's like, "What are you talking about? This is just fine." I'm like, "Well, are you not listening to what they're saying?"
Yeah, it drives me nuts as well.
Funny, interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So, Tony, tell me a little bit. How did you get into this line of business? This is pretty, it's pretty interesting, very technical, but it's not just technical. It's also, there's a lot of people skills involved here. There's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of marketing. How did you get into this?
That's a great question. I think I've probably told you off air this story before, but I had another business in a completely different industry. It was a brick and mortar business. And once that business got up and running and was doing well, we had some marketing dollars to spend. And I had always had an interest in photo and video. I'd actually, for a short time, had gone to school to study this stuff a little bit. And I decided I'm just going to make my own stuff. Because again, I saw how important social media was. And if you're going to post organically to social media, it's really about keeping your foot on the gas and posting all the time. And, you know, it's expensive to have somebody do that for you on a weekly basis, or can be. And so I was like, I'm going to do this myself. And so I started making my own content for that business. And when you're a small business owner, you just happen to know other small business owners through networking like BNI or whatever it is. And other people started to say, oh, I love that video that you posted. Can you put me in touch with who made that? And I was like, well, I made that.
Right.
And so I started taking on projects as kind of just a fun thing to do on the side, make a little extra money, but it was more enjoyable for me. And then we all know what happened in 2020. Pandemic hit. At that time, it felt like a good time for me to exit the business that I was in. So I sold that business. And then obviously it made sense to start doing this full time. And so within this kind of world, I guess, of video production, there's a few different business structures that exist. There's pure production companies, and they will be hired by a marketing person at a corporation or a marketing agency, and they're coming in to just fulfill a task. We already know the script. We already know the messaging. All that's done. You're just executing on the production level. And then there's people on the complete opposite side of that, like our friends over at SE Digital, where they handle ad management, Google ads, that kind of thing. But they don't do any of the creative side. We kind of exist. Heartstop Media is a little bit in the middle of that, a little bit of a hybrid of those two. I don't do any ad management, but I understand how Facebook ads work, how Google ads work, because a lot of the content I'm making for my customers is going to end up on one of those channels. So it's important for me to understand how those systems work. And then, of course, you know, just the social media strategy for myself is just a huge interest. I have a couple online, I guess, influencer accounts, if you want to call them that, where I get to play around and just trial stuff and see what works. And then I can take those lessons learned and pass them on to my customers.
Cool. So basically, to answer the question, how you got into it, you got into it by having a business and trying it out yourself.
Exactly. And seeing the power of it.
Yeah. Where should a person be these days in social media? Because that's talk about something that's changed a lot.
Well, I'm a big proponent of a shotgun approach. I try to be as in many places as I can be. TikTok kind of changed social media. So social media is really, still kind of in its infancy, right? It's only been around since 2005-ish, really. I think Instagram came out in 2010 or 11, so it's not that old of a technology. And
so I should probably not be doing a lot on MySpace, though, just to be clear on this.
MySpace still exists. I think it's still.
Well, look, yeah, I know, and I log in using my AOL email address too. So you know,
I miss Instant Messenger. I loved it, man. But so historically, it was like YouTube is kind of your longer form videos. Facebook is more personal. Instagram is photos, and then TikTok comes along, and they figured out, well, hey, if we can make this action, this little swipe of the thumb, bring you just new content. So they came up with this short form vertical video kind of format. Instead of them relying on you, Mike, as the user to say, I want to see stuff from this person, that person, they just go, we're going to have our algorithm kind of learn your habits, and then we're just going to feed you stuff we think you're going to like. And they soaked up all this market share. And so Facebook, Meta and Google took notice, and they all kind of made themselves clones of TikTok. So you have Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, and they all function the same way as TikTok, basically. The good news about that is I can make one piece of short form content.
It'll work in all channels.
And I don't have to change a thing about it.
Okay.
Because previously, for someone like me, the consideration was like, all right, you want a video, where's the like most important? Is it YouTube? Is it Facebook? You know, where is it going to go? But now it's just like, let's just make short form content and we can use that shotgun approach. With that said, you will always find as a business or an individual, for whatever reason, the way you create stuff or the stuff you're coming up with will tend to do better in one place or another. And wherever you see that trend happening, that's where you really should focus your efforts. You can still post to everywhere else, but really concentrate on whatever seems to be giving you the most traction. In my opinion, I think Instagram is probably going to be the big platform over the next 5 years.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The one that I understand the least. Thank you so much for that. Now
I'll give you a crash course on it and we'll get off the air.
I'm going to need it because I'm going to crash.
Yeah.
Any interesting projects that you can reference to tell us about, work that you've done? Talk about sharing a story.
Sure. Well, I mean, obviously we do Over the Edge every year.
Of course. And that's interesting.
Yep.
Scary, but interesting.
Yeah. I tend to work a lot with service-based businesses.
Okay.
And so I work with Fagundes Plumbing and Heating. They're in Tingsboro. They're fantastic. I've worked with Frasca Title, who's in our B&I group, Purple Finch Properties. And so a lot of it's, maybe not the most exciting industries, but I do every once in a while get to work on something really special. Every year I go and film at NASCAR weekend up in Loudon, New Hampshire. The track actually hires myself and a friend of me and my friend do it together. And that's crazy because we're filming race cars, they have concerts, and they're doing same day turnarounds. So they sell tickets all through the weekend right up till Sunday afternoon, and they want to promote it as it's happening. So we go in there early morning, we start filming, and then one of us breaks off and starts editing, and the other one goes back out, keeps filming. So that's cool because we have all access passes. We can go where we want. We get on stage with the bands, and there's like 5,000 people in the crowd. So that's pretty fun. But a really cool story that I worked on was a woman. She had come here from Nepal. She had won a immigration lottery, and she moved here by herself. And about a year after she was here, she was diagnosed with a disease that causes kidney failure. And so she needed to find a match. She's here by herself. She has no family. And she met a coworker, and the coworker said, "I'll go get tested." And it's about a 1 in, I think, like 150,000 chance that someone's a match for a donor. And this person was a match and said, "Yeah, I'll give you my kidney." And so this woman had donated a kidney to her coworker who she just met. And so the company brought me in to film a little documentary about that story.
Wow, that's great.
And it was just really cool to, I'm helping small businesses every week, and that's awesome because, helping my local community.
But that's a human story.
But that's a human story, exactly. So
I love it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. What's next for you and Heartstop Media? What's on the big dreams list?
That's a great question. I think the big dreams list is to build out to the point where I can start taking on more human story type stuff, probably a little bit more in the charitable arena, because that's the stuff that really gets me fired up and is really the interesting storytelling aspect of the job. And I also think that I would like to just continue to master the game of social media, because that's really what it is. It's a game. It changes so rapidly. And there's a lot of talk about the negative impacts of social media on our behaviors, our kids. And so I like to think of it like I'm helping people put out positive content that is kind of, minimizing those negative aspects. And so I think anything I can do to turn this machine into a force for good, because again, it is such a new technology, and that is part of the reason why it's rapidly changing. And so I really want to get up every day and just feel like I'm making a difference in the world. And if I don't feel like I'm doing that, I can't get motivated to do something. So
yeah, you think about social media, and I do in my heart believe that more communication ultimately is good for the human race. It's just how do we get to the place where the more is more good communication?
Yeah, it's pros and cons to everything, right? And I think we're just starting to learn how to manage those with these technologies, because look, I mean, there just hasn't been a precedent for a lot of this stuff, and there's no legislation set up for a lot of it, and so we're learning kind of hard lessons, and so I want to continue to. I guess to put it broadly, just be a force for good.
Good for you. I love that. So listen, many years from now, when we're looking back on this video, we'll want to have a timestamp. So I think I should tell everybody who's listening, we're filming this about an hour after the big eclipse of 2024. Did you get to see it?
I was driving. I was on the highway, and
they're like, "Oh, it's very dark here."
I took my sunglasses off because it was getting dark, but that was about it. So
it looked a little like Los Angeles on a hazy, smoggy day.
Yes,
I've experienced that, and it was a little bit like, "Oh, this is odd."
It's distinctly different than like dusk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, very absolutely. So someday when we're telling our children, our grandchildren about all the amazing things we did in life, we can say, "Oh, and this also took place on the day of the great eclipse."
That's right.
Listen, Tony, I want to thank you for coming in today, and obviously thank you for your support of United Way, for our community. We mentioned Over the Edge, which you've filmed for years. We appreciate that so much. You just made a video for us recently. It's playing at Chunky's movies. Which we appreciate as well. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure. And thanks for having me.
And best of luck to you and everything you do at Heartstop Media.
Thank you.
All right. So you've been listening to the United Way, Living United with Small Business TV show. I've been talking with Tony Pica from Heartstop Media. Until next time, thank you for listening, and be kind to one another, because great things, they really do happen when we live united.